Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. In today's What's for Dinner video, I'll be sharing with you what meals we had this past week. Our dinners were easy to make, budget friendly, and delicious. So if you're looking for some weeknight meal ideas for your family, just keep watching and make sure you stay tuned until the end. I will be sharing a recipe, is a new one that I tried for a cake mix banana bread. For dinner the next night, we did like a You're on Your Own or Yo-Yo night. Gary went out to Buffalo Wild Wings with a few of his buddies to watch some UFC fight. I know nothing about that. But he didn't get a picture, but he just had chicken wings. You all know what that looks like. And then for me, I decided that chicken strips and macaroni and cheese sounded good to me. He offered to bring me something home from Buffalo Wild Wings, but he didn't get back until really late, so I wanted to eat before then. I also decided to make the macaroni and cheese with some little shells that I had on hand and this Velveeta cheese sauce pouch. I made myself a salad, and then I'm going to use this Lighthouse Ranch. And the chicken tenders, I just cooked them up in the air fryer, 400 degrees for maybe like 12 to 15 minutes. For the macaroni and cheese, I boiled up the pasta in some water, drained it, added it back to the pot with a little bit of milk and that Velveeta cheese sauce pouch. And then here is my plate. So I've got the salad, the chicken strips, and the macaroni and cheese. And y'all, I've used those Velveeta sauce packets many times before in the past. I don't know if it was just this batch or not, but I could only eat about 2, maybe 3 bites of the macaroni and cheese. It was so incredibly salty, and I've never had that happen before. I didn't add any salt. I didn't even add any salt to the pasta water when I was cooking it, which I normally do, but I didn't this night, and I'm glad I didn't. So if you all have used those Velveeta packets recently, let me know if you've had the same experience. Like I said, it could just be this batch, or I don't know if they've changed their recipes. I was bummed because, you know, I really wanted the macaroni and cheese, but it's okay. By the time I ate that salad and the chicken strips, I was, you know, pretty full anyway. But yeah, that was our dinner this night. So for the next night, these chicken Caprese sandwiches were on my meal plan for lunch, but I ended up moving it to dinner for us. I'm going to start out though by making a pesto pasta salad. So I had these noodles in my pantry that I needed to use up, so I just boiled them in some salted water according to the package instructions, drained it really well, rinsed it with cold water. And I didn't really follow a recipe for this. I just kind of eyeballed everything. Now, this is optional, but we like a creamy pesto pasta salad. So I'm going to add a little mayonnaise to the bowl. You can skip that, though, if you want to. Here, I've got some pesto. This happens to be homemade. This was in my freezer. I'd let it thaw. I shared this in a previous video. I'll link that down below in case you want to see how I made it. So I'm going to mix the mayo and pesto together really well, and then we're going to add in our tomatoes. I've got some grape tomatoes here. I just cut them in half. You could use Roma tomatoes if you'd prefer to do that. Next, I found this the little balls of mozzarella on markdown at Kroger. As you can see, I got it at a really good price, and that's kind of why I wanted to make this pasta salad, is to use up those little mozzarella balls. So I'm going to give that a mix and then add in that pasta and give that a really good stir. Now, you can also add in some fresh basil to this, but I wasn't ready to serve it yet, so I covered this and placed it into the refrigerator until I was ready to serve. Now I'm going to make some chicken Caprese sandwiches. I didn't follow a recipe for this either, but I was inspired by an Instagram post from Diane Morrissey. I'll link that below. I've got the oven preheating to 400 degrees. Here I've got some ciabatta rolls. These were also in my freezer. I allowed them to thaw. I split them and then laid them out on a cookie sheet. I'm going to sprinkle them with just a little bit of olive oil, and I placed them into the preheated oven for maybe about 5 minutes until they started to get toasty. Next, I decided to take some sliced fresh mozzarella cheese and add that to one side of the sandwich. I placed this back into the oven for another, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 minutes or so until the cheese was really gooey and melty. Now I'm going to add on my chicken. Now these are some thin chicken cutlets that I marinated. I had some Ken's balsamic vinaigrette salad dressing in my fridge that really needed to be used up. So I marinated that overnight and then just cooked the chicken in the air fryer at 360 degrees until it was cooked to 165 degrees internal temperature. Now this is also optional, but I added on some spinach. You could also do arugula, lettuce, or you could just leave off the greens altogether. Added some sliced Roma tomatoes and seasoned those up with some salt and pepper. And then last but not least, I'm gonna add some basil as well as a balsamic glaze. Now I meant to also add some pesto on this, but I just totally forgot. I made 2 sandwiches for Gary, and when he ate the second sandwich, he remembered, or I remembered rather, to put pesto on that. And he liked them both, but he said he actually preferred it, without the pesto. But either way would be fine. And so that's it. Here are the finished plate. Here is the finished plate rather. We've got the sandwich and the pasta salad, and this was delicious. Those sandwiches had so much flavor. I love the combination, and the pasta salad is just so yummy. Now, the next dinner was actually a request from Gary. I'd made this for New Year's Day for us, and he asked me to make it again. Now, I will link that video in the description box below where I kind of more thoroughly go through how I made everything. All the recipes will be linked in the description box below as well, but I'll quickly go through it tonight. So I've got this seasoned pork tenderloin. I'd got it at Publix on BOGO. It was in my freezer. I thawed it. I seared it in a little bit of olive oil in a hot skillet on top of the stove on both sides, and then moved it into an oven. It was set at, I believe, 350 degrees, and I baked it until it was 145 degrees internal temperature, covered it with foil, let it rest for about 10 minutes before I sliced it up. I had this box of Jiffy Mix in my pantry to use up, so I just baked it according to the package instructions. And once they came out of the oven, I brushed the tops with a little butter. Now, I also had this can of yams in my pantry, and I wasn't really sure what to do with it, so I just drained the syrup off, simmered it until they were like warm all the way through, falling apart, and I added a little bit of butter, brown sugar, and some cinnamon. Now, I also made I Heart Recipes Hoppin John, and like I said, I'll have that recipe linked down in the description box below for you. And then to go along with the pork loin, I made a creamy mushroom sauce. Again, that recipe will also be linked down below. And this was our dinner, and it was delicious. So good. For dinner the next night, I did barbecue ribs in the crock pot. So I had some ribs, and I removed the membrane off the back. I seasoned them up with both sides. To a crock pot, I'm going to add in some Dr. Pepper. Now, this is optional. You could also use Coca-Cola. You could do apple juice. You could do root beer, whatever you like, or just chicken or beef stock. To that, I'm going to add in a few drops of liquid smoke. You want to be careful with this. This can overpower very quickly. And then I had maybe like a third of this bottle of Famous Dave's Rich and Sassy barbecue sauce. This was in my fridge. I'd forgotten I had it. I needed to use it up. So I'm going to add it to the crock pot and give that a stir. Next, and I'm showing you here what I used to season the ribs with. I used the Kinder's brown sugar garlic, and I forgot to show you the Kinder's barbecue blend. I used both of those on the ribs. So I added the ribs to the crock pot. I'm going to cover this with a lid, and I cooked this on low for 8 hours. I did go through halfway and switch the ribs around. So the ribs that were on top, I moved to the bottom. The ones that were on bottom, I moved to the top. Here are what they look like when they were done. Super, super tender, falling apart. I laid them out on a foil-lined baking sheet, brushed both sides with some of the Kinder's barbecue sauce, and then I placed them under the broiler for just a few minutes until that sauce got really sticky and caramelized. And this is what they look like when they were done. And these ribs, like I said, they were just fall apart tender and were so flavorful. All right, I actually did the sides the night before. I'm going to start out by making a macaroni salad. Of course, the recipe will be linked down below. I did make a few changes to it, though. I'm going to start out by making like the sauce or the dressing for the macaroni salad. I've got some mayonnaise in a bowl. I'm going to add in some buttermilk. Next, I'm going to add in granulated sugar. You could use a sugar replacement if you'd prefer to do that. Next, I'm going to add in the apple cider vinegar. This is one of the changes that I made. I used a little less vinegar than what the recipe called for. I just prefer things a little less acidic. Now I'm going to add in some garlic powder and onion powder, then salt and pepper. And while I do that, a quick note about this recipe. Now, I've made many, many macaroni salad recipes over the years. I think I came across this one last year, and I've made it a couple times, maybe 3 or 4. And this is my favorite one that I've made. And Gary normally prefers store-bought macaroni salad over homemade. He didn't remember having this last year, but when I made it this night, he tasted it. He was like, wow. He was like, this is actually really good. So I recommend you give this recipe a try, and you can totally make it your own. Now, I gave that sauce a really, really good mix, and I'm going to set that to the side. In this bowl, I've got some elbow macaroni. I boiled it in some salted water according to the package instructions, drained off the water, and then rinsed it in some cold water. I added it to this bowl. Now for the vegetables, I'm going to add in some Roma tomatoes. These have been seeded and diced. Added in some cucumber, again, seeded and diced. I believe the recipe calls for some red onions, which I didn't add. And then it also calls for shredded cheese, which I have added in the past, but I didn't add it today because I was making broccoli salad that had cheese in it. But you can also add in whatever vegetables you want. You could add in celery. You could add in hard-boiled eggs, pickles. You could add in bacon, ham. Again, make it your own. But when I add this sauce, I like to save a little bit because if you've made any kind of pasta salad before, you know that the pasta really absorbs that sauce. And so with this recipe in particular, I like to set aside some of the sauce. And, right as I'm ready to serve the macaroni and cheese, I'll mix in the final little bit of sauce. But yeah, this is a yummy, really versatile macaroni salad. Next up, I'm making a broccoli salad. Of course, the recipe will be linked down below. This is like a Copycat Ruby Tuesday broccoli salad. Here I've got some broccoli florets. I washed them, of course, and just cut them up into smaller pieces. In this measuring cup, I've got some warm water. I'm going to add my sugar into that. Give it a stir until it dissolves. Now, it wasn't completely dissolving, so I popped it in the microwave for just like maybe 15 or 20 seconds. I'm going to pour that over my broccoli, give that a stir, and then I allowed that to sit while I got everything else together. So I'm going to set that to the side. In this little bowl, I'm going to make the dressing for the broccoli salad. So we're going to go in with some mayonnaise. Just use your favorite. If you're a Miracle Whip lover, use the Miracle Whip. Next, we're going to add in some sugar. Now, what I did was I took the amount of sugar and divided it in half. I added half to the warm water that poured over the broccoli, the other half into the sauce. Now we're going to add in some white vinegar, and I decided to add just a little splash of milk. The recipe didn't call for that, but I wanted to thin the sauce out a little bit. Here you can see I'm tasting the sauce. I also added some salt and pepper, and I've got that done, so now I'm ready to assemble the salad. I gave the broccoli another stir. I'm going to add in some shredded cheese. You could do shredded or cubed. I've got this Sargento shredded, so I'm going to use that. I've got some cooked and crumbled bacon. So I will add that, and then the recipe didn't call for sunflower seeds, but I decided to add some in. I gave that a toss, and then I'm going to add in the sauce and give that a really good mix. And then really the broccoli salad is done. You can add in red onions if you like. You could do cashews. You could do apple pieces. I am going to take about half of this out and set it to the side because I really love dried cranberries in my broccoli salad, and Gary does not prefer it in his broccoli salad at all. So I set some out for him, and then to the other half of the broccoli salad, I'm going to add in those craisins, give it a stir, and then that's it. You can eat it right away, but I prefer to put it in the refrigerator for a little bit, and this is what it looked like when it was done. Now, here are the plates. We've got the ribs, the broccoli salad, the macaroni salad, some of the cornbread, and this was delicious. Now, I will say with the broccoli salad, though, I hadn't made this recipe in several years. I've shared another broccoli salad recipe on my channel before, and I do prefer that one to this one, but this was still a good broccoli salad. There's nothing wrong with it. I just have a slight preference for that one. But yeah, this was dinner. It was delicious. Dinner the next night, we weren't really hungry at dinner time, and I didn't feel like cooking anyway. Gary had a meeting this night, and so he stopped after his meeting and grabbed us dinner. I was wanting Sonic's chili cheese tots, so I got the supersonic cheeseburger, but I got it without cheese, which I know is weird, but they don't have just like a regular hamburger on the menu. They're all cheeseburgers. Anywho, I digress. And then I make some alterations to it. So basically I get mine with ketchup, mustard, pickle, tomato, and I add bacon. And then I got the chili cheese tots. And then for Gary, he only ordered 2 wraps. They gave him a third. He got one of their hickory barbecue chicken wraps. And then for the other one, he substituted barbecue sauce. He substituted ranch dressing for the barbecue sauce anyway. And he got cheese tots. And yeah, that was our dinner this night. Super quick and easy. For dinner the next night, we just did leftovers. So we had some ribs, some of the leftover Caprese pasta salad, and some of the other sides. And yeah, so we just kind of had like a leftover buffet. For dinner this next night, I tried a new recipe for sweet chili shrimp with asparagus. The recipe will be in the description box below. Here are the ingredients that we need for like the glaze and the marinade for the shrimp. I've got some sesame oil, sriracha, soy sauce, Thai sweet chili sauce, some garlic I'm going to mince up, and then we need some shrimp. These were previously frozen. I just allowed them to thaw. I mixed up the sauce according to the recipe and then took a little bit of it, added it to a Ziploc bag along with the shrimp. And you want to allow this to marinate for just a little bit. I just let it marinate while my oven was preheating and while I got the asparagus prepped. So speaking of the asparagus, I am going to kind of see where it naturally goes from tender to hard. And if you just take one stalk of asparagus and kind of bend it, where it breaks is where you want to cut it. Then I'm going to cut it into kind of bite-sized pieces. Place it onto an aluminum foil lined baking sheet. I'm going to drizzle it with some oil. I'm using extra virgin olive oil. You can use avocado or whatever you prefer. We're going to season that up just simply with some salt and pepper. Give that a toss, and this is going to go into a preheated oven. It was set at 400 degrees, and I baked it for about 6 to 7 minutes. Here's what that looked like when it was done. So I'm going to give that a little toss and push it over to the side with my tongs. Next, I'm going to add on the shrimp, and I tried to remove as much of the marinade as I could from the shrimp as I was putting it on the cookie sheet. I decided to add a little bit of salt and pepper to the shrimp. The recipe didn't say to do that, but I felt like it would need it. So once I've done that, I'm going to give the shrimp a little toss, and this is going to go back into that oven and bake for another maybe 8 to 10 minutes or so until the shrimp is cooked all the way through and turns pink. So at this point, I pushed the shrimp and asparagus together, and here what I've got is the rest of that marinade that we made before. I just brought it to a boil and simmered it for maybe like 3 or 5 minutes until it became a glaze. I drizzled that over the shrimp and asparagus, gave it a toss, and then again, the recipe didn't say to do this, but I popped this back into the oven and I broiled it for just a couple minutes. Not very long at all. I just wanted that glaze to just kind of stick to the shrimp and asparagus really well. I'm keeping the sides super simple. I've got some microwavable jasmine rice. I'm going to cook according to package instructions. I have this box of chicken egg rolls. I'm going to cook in the air fryer, again, according to package instructions. And I've got the sweet and sour sauce that I'm going to serve on this side of the egg rolls. So there are the finished egg rolls. And then once that rice was done, I just fluffed it up with a little fork. And then here are the plates. So I laid down the rice, the shrimp. I did add some sesame seeds just as a garnish. And then we've got the egg roll and the sweet and sour sauce, and this was a yummy, super quick dinner. This did not take very long at all. Really, the longest time it took was for the oven to preheat. So if you're looking for a quick and easy dinner, I would give this recipe a try. All right, now that's all for the dinners, but this is a recipe for a cake mix banana bread. I've seen recipes on Pinterest and on Instagram for banana bread using a yellow cake mix, and I've been meaning to make that, but I was digging around in my pantry the other day, and I had a Dolly Parton banana cake mix that I really needed to use up, and so I thought, well, if you can make banana bread with a yellow cake mix, why not a banana cake mix? So decided to give this a try. Here are the other ingredients that I'm going to use, and this recipe will be linked down below for you. First up, I've got that cake mix. Like I said, the recipe called for a yellow. I'm using banana. We've got some eggs, vanilla extract. The recipe that I used called for melted butter, but I wanted to use some oil, so I've got that. I've got some ripe bananas, and then the recipe didn't call for nuts, but I wanted to add in some chopped walnuts. And then I know for the Magnolia recipe, Joanna Gaines, she sprinkles sugar on top of the banana bread before she puts it in the oven, so I decided to try it with this. I've got the oven preheating to 350 degrees. In this bowl, I'm going to mash up the bananas. Now, the recipe called for 3 bananas, but I had 4 that needed to be used up. As you can see, these 2 are really needing to be used up. So I'm just taking a fork and mashing those up. Once I've got that done, I'm going to add in the eggs. Now, after I get all of the eggs mixed in, I like to take a whisk and just kind of whisk them up, off by their side. It just makes it a little easier to incorporate. Once that's mixed really well with the bananas, I'm going to add in the vanilla extract. Next, I'm adding in my oil. And like I said, the recipe called for melted butter. But to be honest, I didn't really have a lot of butter on hand that was thawed. I had some in my freezer. And I just didn't feel like thawing it and melting it and all that jazz. So I just decided to use the oil. Now, here is that banana cake mix that I mentioned. I'm going to add the cake mix in, and I decided to add those nuts on top. Usually when I make breads or cakes that have like chocolate chips or nuts, I try to mix the nuts or chocolate chips with flour. It just helps it incorporate better. They don't, kind of sink to or rise to the top or clump together. So I'm going to give that a good mix, and now we're ready to put it into our loaf pans. Now, instead of doing like one large loaf pans, I did 2 smaller ones, and I sprayed them really, really well with some of the Baker's Joy. You can grease it however you prefer. I'm going to divide the batter into the pans, and this is going to go into the preheated oven. Now, if you're using the regular size loaf pan, you'll want to bake it for about 45 minutes to maybe an hour. Just depends on your oven, but these smaller ones took about 35 to 40 minutes. You just want to bake these until the toothpick and centered into the center comes out clean. And I forgot to mention, but I showed it if you notice it. I did sprinkle some sugar on top before I placed this into the oven. You can skip the sugar. You can use brown sugar instead. You could sprinkle some additional nuts on top if you'd like to do that. But yeah, once this came out of the oven, I allowed it to cool on some wire racks, and then we were ready to slice it up with a little bit of butter, and this was delicious. Now, I will say though, this was a very, very moist banana bread. It may be because I used a cake mix instead of, like the usual flour, baking soda, all that jazz. Could be because I used an extra banana, not sure. And I'm not saying that in a bad way at all. It's just like you could barely hold the piece of banana bread. It was so moist, it just wanted to fall apart. But it was delicious, and it had a really great banana flavor. All right, that is it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you liked this video, and you got some dinner ideas from it. If you did like it, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.